The collision spawn test combines the functionality of two of our other tests, collision and spawn. Spawning in particles is the act of one particle giving birth to more particles, and is often used to create firework blooms, explosions, or droplets of water and so on. Collision spawn uses the point in time that the particle collides with a space warp to trigger its spawning action. You can in fact pretty much mimic its functionality by using a collision test in one event and a spawn test in a second event, and in this way you can benefit from some extra functionality offered by the collision test, i.e. particles spawning before they actually hit the collision space warp and so on. But the collision spawn test offers us another, more compact option, which has some features which are actually unique to itself. The main functionality of spawn test is of course to create particles from existing particles in our flow. If we have a look at the collision spawn test GUI, we can see that it has three main areas that define how our spawn will react, and they can basically be thought of as how many, which you can see in here, how fast, and how big. And by setting each of these areas, we can define just how our particles will spawn. So let's have a look at the parameters in some more detail. Up here you can see the first parameter we have is test true for, and the two tick boxes here define which of the particles involved in the test is actually true and is actually then passed on through the wire to the next event. By default the spawned particles are actually sent out as the parent particle is said to be deleted upon collision. However, if you untick delete parent, you can also choose to have it passed out as well. So if you can see here, you've got delete parent. If I untick that, you can now see that parent particles can actually be sent out as well. So now you have the choice of only sending out the parent particles as testing true, or sending out the spawn particles, or either or. You've got the choice there. But as you can see, when you actually have delete parent turned on, you don't actually have that choice anymore. You can only actually send out spawn particles. The next area is the pick box. And in this area you can actually pick the deflectors that are actually going to be used by this particular test. If you've actually viewed the chapter that we had on the deflectors, you'll actually understand what all the different deflectors are by now and what they can actually do. And you'll also know they can actually pick more than one deflector to use in any one test. So here we've got one S deflector, but in fact we could have multiple S deflectors or any other type of deflector that we choose to use in our scene. If you haven't actually seen that chapter, I would recommend that you actually go on to that chapter now and view that before returning here to continue this particular chapter. Next we have the spawn rate and amount group, and this group is used to define how many particles are created and when. The first two radio buttons define when the parent particle will spawn and what happens to it when it does. You can see we have spawn on first collision and we have spawn on each collision. With spawn on first collision, with this option, obviously the parent particle will only spawn on colliding for the first time in your event. With this option is an associated tick box which we just looked at, which is delete parent, which you can see here. When this is active, this option deletes the parent particle on the first collision and ensures its removal from your flow. If you do not want this one-off behavior, you can actually choose to use the second radio button, which you can see here, spawn on each collision. And this option allows you to have particles spawned on multiple occasions and features the until number spinner, which you can see here. If I actually make this active, you can see this spinner becomes active. And this actually allows you to define just how many times the parent particle can collide and still spawn particles. Just set this to a high number to make it pretty much infinite. An implicit side effect of using this option is that your parent particle cannot be deleted, as it obviously needs to spawn further particles. There's no point in having the option to actually have multiple collisions if the parent particles get deleted on the first option. So you can see that when this is on as the option, you don't have the choice to delete your parent particle anymore. Next we have the spawnable percentage parameter, and with this parameter you can actually define just what percentage of the particles will be eligible to become parent particles and therefore spawn other particles. This is actually a one-off assignment as particles enter the event, so don't expect a particle to strike a surface and not spawn particles, and on the second collision to actually spawn particles. It doesn't actually work like that. A particle is assigned the ability